Hi, everybody. I'm Deb Gabor. I'm the author of Branding is Sex and Irrational Loyalty and the host of Brand New World. And if you're watching this, it is Friday. It is a Friday in February, and it's a really freaking good day. And I am so excited today to bring my friend and a spectacular human being, Hilary Corna, on this show. So if you've been following the trajectory of what originally were Debinars, to then the early iteration of Brand New World to where we are today, then it's possible that you've seen Hilary on this show, but you've also seen Hilary in other places. And Hilary, like I said, she's one of my favorite people. I met her, oh gosh, I guess back in probably goes back to 2018. And she is somebody that I have followed with interest because her thing is about humanizing process. And when I think about this notion of humanizing process, it almost sounds oxymoronic to me. And initially, when I was thinking about process, I think about operations, and I think about very tactical things, and I think about the order in which you do things and how you hack processes to make them more efficient and turn yourself into an operational juggernaut. Upon meeting Hilary, I learned that it is so much more. She is one of the most inspirational human beings, a favorite friend of mine, and I want to go ahead and bring her into the room, and so we can start the chat. So, hi, how are you?
Good morning.
I am so happy to see you. This is going to be so cool. So, I want to start off. How did we meet? Do you remember how we met?
Yes, so I got hired by EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, to come to their event KEP, the Key Executive Program, lots of acronyms at MIT.
Yes, AEP at MIT. Yes.
Yeah, a couple years ago. Shout out to Barrett for making that connection. And I was presenting a morning session, and you were in the audience as a learner.
I know. So it was really cool. This was one of those unusual situations where I was a student in a class. Often I am the teacher. I speak at a lot of those things. And actually, I'm really disappointed because last spring I was supposed to be a presenter at KEP International, KEPI, not at MIT, but EOKEPI. And it's a bummer that went away. And I know we're, as an organization, EO is reimagining all of the executive education. And if you're an EO member and you haven't taken an opportunity to avail yourself of one of those programs, they are really, really terrific. But back to me and Hilary. So Hilary was one of my favorite instructors in this course. It was a great opportunity for me to sit back and learn something really unique from a unique human being. And part of my mission with Brand New World is to expose my ecosystem to my ecosystem. And I'm glad to have Hilary as part of my ecosystem. So what is the mission that you are on? You are this incredible, passionate, mission-driven human being. And I want to give you an opportunity to share with the audience in your own words, like what is this thing that you're doing?
Absolutely. So fun fact about me, I come from an Italian-American family. And something that you might not know is my father passed away when I was 8 months old in a car accident. But at the time, my father was destined to take over my grandpa's company. So we're a family of entrepreneurs in the construction business. The stereotype is real sometimes. And he, about 10 years after he passed, we found a letter that he had written himself. And no one had read this letter before. No one had seen it. He wrote it to himself, and it was in his desk. And we came across these things and found it. And in the letter, he essentially in short terms said, if I am embarking on a journey that maybe no man has come before, and if I am successful, may I always remember, my frugal beginnings. And if I am not successful, may I always focus on what I do have, which is the love of my family and friends. And it changed our family because this is a part of my dad that we never saw. I didn't know him very well, but my mom never saw this side of him. And we live in a world where we can show these sides now. When we show up, that we are people beyond work. We have health we're trying to manage. We have our well-being. We have our wealth we're trying to manage. We have families and issues, and we have real struggles. And you can't just check those at the door anymore in the way that it was expected in the past. So one of the big myths I often are asked about when it comes to the human way is, does that mean you're a big fan of or advocate of people first organizations? I'm like, no, there was a lot of racist people first organizations 30 years ago.
Right.
That is not the same thing. We've become a culture that is more open, more diverse, and more human than ever before. In 1990, only 4% of Americans had passports. In 2020, 40% of Americans have passports.
Wow.
Significant difference. People are getting married later. People are choosing not to have kids or have kids later. So they're choosing experiences and they're valuing different things. Look at the yoga industry. The yoga industry alone is $1 trillion industry in the US. It's brought a level of consciousness and awareness to humans that's never been experienced in the West before. So how does this all contribute to business? As culture and society is becoming more human, those are your employees. Those are your consumers, and they're expecting you to be human too. And that's my mission, is to help businesses usher in this new way of doing business. How do you manage social justice issues? How do you manage a brand that's more human rather than full of corporate jargon and these, templated responses that have been pushed by books like Predictable Revenue? How do you actually have character in your customer experience so that you deliver on the brand that you so eloquently designed? So this is not just pie in the sky, let's be nicer to each other. I would love for that, but this is, how do you actually deliver in a more human way to build back trusted bonds that have been lost as we've been pushing digital innovation and technology? So that's
Absolutely.
my mission.
Yeah, well, and your mission really dovetails a lot with my mission. And there's so much about branding and business strategy that overlaps with what you do. I often think that, there's if they were Venn diagrams, they're nice sort of here's business and process and actions and customer experience and how you show up. And here is the core values, your mission, your vision, your values, your core ideology, kind of the structural foundation of the business, your brand, which is inclusive of customers in that. And those things kind of overlap really nicely in the middle. And, one kind of serves the other, and they're kind of indelibly intertwined.
It is. And one of the problems we've seen over the last decade in business is, as we try to scale our companies and grow, we operate in silos. And this has hindered American business in the West. For those of you who don't know, my background is Toyota. So my background is Kaizen, process improvement, and I've only ever worked in Asia. I've actually never worked for an American company in the US. I've worked only for Toyota and have been in the West ever since, running my own company. But what we found that's so interesting is, in the West, with the push of digital innovation, we have focused so much on, okay, hey, CFO, you just go do your job. I won't ask any questions as long as you take care of your job. Hey, CMO, you go do your job. I won't ask any questions as long as you take your job. And we take pride in that siloed approach, when in fact, there is so much overlap, because what happens is a consumer doesn't experience a department. A consumer experiences a company. And so we have to deliver consistently across those disjointed departments to deliver a seamless experience. And this is what Toyota is known for in terms of a quality level, right? So in the human way, there's actually 4 key components: brand, EX, CX, and culture. Mm-hmm. Because what we find is, you might do really well with brand. You might have a beautiful brand that's super consistent and on target with your values. And then you might fail in delivering that in CX. Or you might have
we see that all the time. And over the course of the pandemic, we've seen, on the positive side, brands that have done an incredible job of delivering on their promise and delivering on the experience and the goals and the values and beliefs of the brand. But then likewise, we've seen probably just as many that have failed to deliver on the smoke and mirrors image that they had created. I always say image and substance have to match, right? And the substance is really part of EX, CX, and these other things you're talking about. So, of course, I'm going to jump in whenever you talk about brand and delivering on the brand. But yeah,
obviously, I set you up.
Yeah, totally. You make it too easy. All right. So I'm sorry I interrupted you. I just got really excited.
No, it's all right. So, what we've seen in the last decade in business is, our whole focus has been pushed on technology? How do we scale our companies? There's nothing wrong with that. It's fucking fantastic, okay? It's great. Here's the problem. We took everything we learned from the industrial age and we applied it to the information age so that we could operate our companies with this machine-like efficiency the same way these manufacturing plants do. That is what has happened. Now we have created these machine-like businesses where we're expecting people to work smarter, faster, harder, constantly. How do you automate? How do you streamline? Productivity, efficiency. And what has happened is you're creating dehumanizing experiences, both for the employee and for the customer. And that's when you experience a situation where an employee doesn't take ownership. And I hear this all the time from CEOs where they say, well, I really just want them to own their work. Well, you need to stop treating them like a robot and stop standardizing through checklists that are teaching them not to think for themselves. And this is where humanization comes into play, because humans and technology need to work together. They're not they're not mutually exclusive. They're not separate. It's not this black and white thing. It's together. At Toyota, we would always say when we go to fix a process, we would first come from the perspective of how are we improving this person's life? Then how does it benefit the business? And what's happened in the West is we improve processes to benefit the business. Hey, how can I cut costs or increase quality? Even sometimes at the detriment of the very person that goes through the process. And that's where we're getting mixed up. We're confusing the outcome as improving the business outcome versus improving someone's life, as a result, improving the business outcome.
One of the things that I picked up from you, and I don't know if this was from the work that we've done together or just our ongoing conversations, or if it goes all the way back to the coursework at the Key Executive Program, but one of the things that I heard loud and clear was to focus on employee experience and focus on that first. Did I pick that up correctly?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest myths in business in the last decade has been customer first mindset.
And so let's talk about that a little bit, because I feel very strongly that the employee experience is really the key. If you're going to hack any kind of relationship that you were ever going to have with a customer or with investors or just with your ecosystem at large as an organization, employees are the place to start. So what are your thoughts behind that? And why do you say that? Because that's one of the things, like you said, it's completely counterintuitive to what we've been hearing for the last decade. And I've been doing this kind of work for 30 years. I have a really long career, and I had always heard customer first, customer first, customer first. And, I'm a big fan of counterintuitive ideas, but this one seemed particularly divergent to me.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a couple things here. One is, we've been taught customer first for what reason, right? It's customer service. But when we think about who's responsible, who owns the customer, at the end of the day, the people that are most important are the people that are face to face with the customer. At Toyota, we would always say, if we find ourselves in a room, in our conference room or in our meeting room and trying to hash out a problem and we couldn't get to the answer, we would literally draw attention to that and say, we need to go to Gemba. And what Gemba means is the front line. Just Japanese term. And so we'd say, we need to go to Gemba. And what that meant internally as a culture, what we knew is that we don't have the answer. The people who have the answer is the person that deals with the customer. And they know their pain points. They know the idiosyncrasies of their experience and how to adapt the experience of the company to match it and adapt the operation to deliver better on it. But most often, what I don't see at all is asking the employee, going down. There's so much ego in Western culture. There's so much desire for individuality and us to be successful as leaders. Here we're sitting on this great software of StreamYard on LinkedIn, and we're all promoting our own platforms, right? Because we believe in the work that we do. But there's a lot of ego in Western culture, and it requires an intense amount of humility to say, I don't know. And who might know better than me? My literal lowest end employee, the one that is on the front line, that sees and talks to the customer every day. And so the lesson in all of this is, if you're seriously looking to grow and if you're seriously looking to serve, and that's a big question because not all businesses are. If you want to serve a certain audience and deliver value and create legacy and a brand that lives after you, what it all comes down to is how you're constantly listening to your customer, creating a channel for feedback to then turn that feedback into action. And that's why I believe in employee first, because you don't get that by sitting in an office. You get that by listening to your employees. And you only listen to your employees by creating a culture where your employees matter and your employees have a way to give that feedback up to you. And so a question I always pose to my clients, and something to post for your own, is if you go to your employees and you say, where are we falling short for you? Where are we falling short? That question is never, very rarely asked. It's always, what can we do for the customer? Which is, how do we push our employees more and more and more for the company to make money? And that's when you create an environment where your employees feel like robots. I just heard it on a call this morning with a friend of mine who works for a $100 million company. On the outside, the brand is fantastic. No one would ever judge it. And on the inside, she said, I feel like I'm just a cog in the wheel that's being used for them to make more money.
I'll
And
tell you, I work with a lot of those brands, and that's often very, very, very true. What I do know about entrepreneurial organizations and the leaders, a lot of mid-cap growth companies, like these fast-growing companies with a grow or die mindset, they're a little bit more in touch with the employees, and they're constantly asking questions. In my own company, we actually ask our employees every week. We ask them a series of questions about how was the week, so that we can get like a thumbs up, thumbs down kind of like a bead on what is the condition of your life and your perception of your value within the organization this week, and then an opportunity to share why or why not. On a quarterly basis, we ask a really important question about how valued do you feel
beautiful
at work and why. That's so important, because the tone of what's happening with our employees all day, every day, it translates up and down and in and out through the brand. I'm a huge believer in this idea of employees first, and not just paying lip service to it.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've
Exactly.
seen organizations, like I get my hands on all kinds of organizations, and our process involves a lot of internal discovery where we do talk to employees at all levels of the organization. We do external discovery. We map those things back together and look for gaps and things like that. And one of the things that I know is that there are a lot of companies that do really well on showing a very nice, beautiful image to the outside world, but are a little bit effed up on the inside. And that seems to be more common than a lot of people think, right?
Yeah. And this is the downfall of standardizations, checklists, compliant policies. What we knew at Toyota to be true is that at the end of the day, people want to be seen, heard, and respected. And this is why this has nothing to do with people first, because people first organizations in the past, you had to leave everything at home. You had to show up to work, not talk about politics, not talk about your personal beliefs, and just do your job. That is not the world we live in anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean when I say seen, heard, and respected? What has happened is the consumer and the employee have become so empowered. The great irony of it all is that technology has allowed us to work our companies and operate our companies with machine-like efficiency, and it's also empowered the customer and the employee. It's made them more knowledgeable before. It's given them information and access to things they never have seen before. It allows them to apply for a job within seconds, at scale, automated, right? So they see all the options they never had before. That's why this is very, very different. And if you ignore the fact that things like Glassdoor exist, transparency is on the rise, things like Blind, if anyone doesn't know what Blind is, it's basically Glassdoor anonymous. Imagine the conversations on that app. People are empowered. So what does that mean? Before, these types of practices that you said were all kind of lip service, they were hidden, right? No one would call it out, or it was behind closed doors, so it didn't really matter. Now they're not hidden anymore. They're being exposed like that. And so the question becomes, how, when we say make people feel seen, heard, and respected, you can't fake it anymore. And people, employees specifically, are not tolerating the bullshit. So this is a big question I get asked a lot because it is a controversial topic. But on average, employee retention right now is about 1.8 years. Okay.
Wow.
It's a big problem. It's a big problem. Directly correlates to bottom line results and efficiency with your costs and cash flow. Labor on average accounts for 70% of companies' expenses. So, okay, big deal, right? It's a big, big deal. But here's the thing. I don't believe that fidelity has been lost because we're human beings. People don't want to be disloyal. They don't want to jump around like this.
Right.
I believe that what has changed is why people stay and that companies have not adapted. Companies are saying, look at our benefits, like just adding amenities, hoping something sticks, instead of listening to the employee and say, what do you want? What matters to you? And evolving with that. That's the gap. Because there are people that are loyal. You have an amazing employee, Tom, who manages all of your incredible platforms, and he's loyal for a reason. And so it's how do you tap into the what they want that drives them to stay rather than what you think they want from the past?
It's interesting because every couple of years I re-examine our benefits package, and there are benefits in that package that I feel like are baseline requirements that you just have to offer the ante to get into the game because every employer offers them. But I also investigate, my competitors in the industry and benchmark against other people to see what they're offering. And what's been really interesting is this trend in my industry to kind of roll back some of the benefits in favor of things that are a little bit more focused on what individual employees find valuable. So things like I offer unlimited PTO, right? Unlimited PTO is we're not doing it in a way so that we don't have to pay people vacation time. We actually want people to be able to go out in the world and explore and have adventures and do things that make them the whole person that they are. One of our core values as an organization is use your magic, which I believe that everybody is a magical effing unicorn. And I want you to bring all of that with you to work. And if that means that you're going to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro, we are going to work as a company to figure out a way that we can support you in doing that, because that's going to make you an incredible employee when you come back. So that's been an interesting trend. And I see that a lot of organizations aren't following up on that. I remember thinking maybe about 5 years ago when I introduced what I thought was a really exciting benefit, which was a profit sharing plan where I would share the profits in the business directly into a 401k plan for you, and you didn't even have to contribute. It was not a matching plan. It was just I was going to throw money in there. But one of the things that I learned was employees were so disconnected from a retirement plan that, especially younger employees who were coming of age and who were growing up and who have grown up in a much, much different world than I did, where that was something that was very valuable. If I thought an employer is going to actually save for my future, well, what I learned is that employees actually want to have really the higher order value for them is like having control over their finances, being able to define what their financial future looks like, and maybe valuing things in a completely different way. But I remember thinking like 5 years ago when I rolled that out and employees were a little bit like, and not because they didn't understand, because they didn't freaking care. I thought ingrates, but then when I really sat back and I thought about it, and asked what would be valuable and interesting to you, how can our relationship as employer-employee, how can that change in a way that's more empowering to you and create a world where you love to come to work? And we came up with all kinds of interesting things that were not those traditional benefits. So that's been a big change.
And that's where this is the poignant, so good. When you talked about humanizing process on the front end and your assumptions around what that meant and how process things feels very linear, that is humanizing process.
Yeah.
Because every process is still a human experience.
100%. And humanizing process to me is like one of those terms. It's like irrational loyalty. It's like words that don't necessarily go together. I want to switch gears because you are doing something really interesting it's this new thing. And I'm quite fascinated by this. One of the things that you said a couple of minutes ago was about the relationship with employees and just the humanization of the world and all of that is people are showing up at work, not just with their work, but with their hopes, fears, dreams, desires, values, beliefs, all the things that they care about. And the vast majority of those things are not related directly to the job that they do every day at work, right? So you have a new podcast out. And it's called Unprofessional.
I do.
Yeah. I want to hear a little bit about that. I listened to the first the first episode that you sent me. I'm interested to understand a little bit about that. Where did the title come from, and what's the mission of the podcast?
Yeah. So I know this is like faux pas, but are you experiencing an echo on your side?
Tom says that you are echoing. Maybe you can back up from your mic a little bit.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Is that better, Tom? Good.
Yay. All right,
Yay.
friends.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Yeah. I know you're like me when you get excited, like you move forward, you get really animated. Okay. So less echo.
There's some science to that too. So unprofessional. Listen, I'm not going to lie. One of the number one questions I get is how old I am. I have a baby face. I'm really young. I wrote my first book when I was 25. I remember being told, you can't write a book. You're too young. What stories do you have to tell? Total judgments and assumptions. And what had happened is I had worked abroad for Toyota for 3 years and traveled across the Asia Pac region, 180,000 miles a year for the company. I was the first female they ever hired in 14 Asian countries to do Kaizen. I was the youngest they ever hired. I was the first Caucasian they ever hired in the Asia Pac office, reporting directly to SVP, right? So what I noticed is that I had experiences that some people would never have in their life. They're never going to get to Asia, much less work for an Asian company. And that that the world could benefit from hearing these things and learnings that like they may never have. And so I envisioned this book and I decided to write the book. But I was a baby in a perspective of, are you given permission to write a book? However, what I truly believe is that wherever you are in life, that there are people just before you that want to learn something from you. One of my favorite people online right now is Danielle Leslie. She has a course called Course from Scratch. And she talks about this, like there is something that from your story that there are people that want to learn from you. And so when I wrote the book, I started dressing older to try to blend in, to try to garner respect, to be worthy of success. I had all this success. I was traveling the world for 1.5 years speaking. I got sponsored by Toyota for 1.5 years. I got a free plug-in Prius car. Like I had all this success, but I didn't feel like I was worthy because of my age, because of my gender. So I tried to act like I wasn't that young. I would wear like this horrible gray suit from Dillard's. I'd wear pearls. I'd like just dress myself like older, right? And then the funny thing is I just have really good genes and I still look young.
Right.
So I am totally transparent about my age. I'm 35 years old and I'm not hiding it. I don't mind because I've worked my bum off and I believe in what I do and I've had tremendous results with my clients, and that's all that matters. My age doesn't matter. And we live in a world where things that define your identity are changing and people are not making the assumptions they did about identity in the past. Some fun facts about me. I ride a motorcycle. I speak Japanese. I study Buddhism. I am born Catholic, resolved that. And there are things about me that you would never know. And so it's like we live in a world where we used to relate upon 3 main things. We used to relate based on where we went to school, the neighborhood we grew up in, and what church we went to. That was society 30 years ago for, grand scheme of things. Now we have ways to relate to people in ways that are vastly diverse. I have a friend who's a female that's a gamer, and you would never guess that she's a gamer. And she goes on Twitch and, does that thing. And so it's like our identity as we know it cannot be made assumptions about. And so unprofessional is all about how do we explore the boundaries between work, humanity, and culture? How can we explore what professionalism means in a new era that's more human? Because what professionalism means to you is not what it means to me. And how can we show up more wholly so that we are accepted by ourselves rather than getting that permission from others?
I love that. And I hope that everybody who is watching this, that you take an opportunity to go check this out. Make sure that you download some episodes, give some ratings, because I really want to see this get big. We are so close to running out of time. I could talk to you all day long. We probably could do 2, 3, 9 hours on all of these subjects. And there's so many additional things that I wanted to cover, like your rebranding and what you're up to now. Could you give like maybe like a 1-minute wrap wrap up of what you're working on right now besides Unprofessional. I know you're going through
Yeah.
a new rebranding. I've seen the new website and I've read some of the content there, and where you're going. And then more importantly, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. We're building a network of unprofessionals, people that are like sick of the standards. They want to be out of the box thinkers, and they want to usher in a new way of doing business. The people that stand for something new. So if you want to be a part of that community, I would highly suggest going to the website, hilarycorna.com, signing up for the newsletter. That's the first and easiest step. Otherwise, I'll be launching next month a collective of unprofessionals. And so in that space, we're really looking to kind of lean into those discomforting conversations around identity and how do we show up more fully ourselves. There's a lot of people showing up to work with facades, trying to perform, trying to garner respect and earn respect rather than knowing that being themselves is what makes them deserving of respect. And so if you're interested in that, definitely join the newsletter. In terms of social, I am the most personal on IG. I am the most opinionated on Twitter, and I am the most prolific on LinkedIn. So whatever you prefer, find me there.
Well, I follow you on all of the social things, and I appreciate the fact that you are differentiating your content and giving us different views of your point of view on all of those different channels. That is a best practice that, at least in our authority marketing practice that I'm trying to teach people to do. You do a terrific job at that.
Thank you.
I love following you on social and keeping up with you. I feel like I see and I hear and I get to look, especially of great photography. You're a terrific writer. I mean, you are so masterful with your words. I get pictures in my mind when I read your writings, especially the more in-depth ones on LinkedIn. I recommend to everybody who's watching this, like, follow Hilary. She is such a unique human being, and she has such an original point of view that is unexpected, and I also think necessary at this time. I've been watching you, for the last couple of years, ever since we got to know each other. And I'll say I am such a fan of your work and such a fan of you as a human. And I'm so excited for what you're doing. And I want other people to be able to benefit from the greatness that you bring to the table. You're the word that I always think of, and we had a guy on this show or on the Debinars a couple of months ago who also was an instructor. Remember Rich Keller? He was an instructor at KEP, and he's the one word branding guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've gone through that one word process, but the one word that I have that I associate with you is the thing that makes you really singular is that you're unexpected, like unexpected in a positive way, or maybe astonishing. I find you astonishing. Just there's so many layers. And I'm so grateful to have you, in this universe of people that I know and admire. And everybody, please go to hilarycorna.com. Go follow Hilary on all of the socials. You have a new book coming out soon?
Yeah. So the new book is due out in September. Again, if you're interested, sign up for the newsletter. That's the easiest way to do it. And I thank you. I think the beauty is that if I've learned anything from Toyota, it's that as much money and integrations and resources you pump into a business, at the end of the day, people, it's not about that. It's about how you nurture relationships and how you relate to people. And for me right now, there's this huge wave happening, and businesses are either going to move and evolve and go with it to be more human, which directly correlates to growth and increased profits, or they're going to be left behind and they're going to, never evolve with what's happening in culture and society. And that's what I fear for a lot of companies. They have no clue and they don't know how to do it.
Yeah. And that's a great way to sum it up. I often talk about your brand being kind of the articulation of the human heart of the business. It is
Beautiful.
The humanity of the business, but you have to deliver on that promise. And delivering on that promise requires you to really, really tap into that humanity, not just talk about it. So again, what we do dovetails together so nicely. Mic drop. You have a terrific weekend. Everybody who's watching, remember all the things, like we're still washing our hands and not touching our faces, and fist bumping and elbow bumping when we meet each other. Wear your mask. Vaccines are coming. I'm very, very hopeful and optimistic about the future. I hope that you are too, Hilary, and I hope that we will be able to meet in person again sometime soon. But for everybody from Brand New World, from Tom, who's behind the scenes, for Hilary, for me, Deb, everyone, have a great weekend. Thanks, and we will see you next week.